President Trump pointed at an angry reporter and said, "Come up here!" The entire crowd went silent. What happened next left millions speechless. He invited his harshest critic onto his stage. The cameras were rolling, and what followed stunned the world. Chants of "USA, USA!" shook the very walls. When President Trump finally appeared, waving and smiling, the energy exploded. He walked up to the podium with the confidence of a man who knew exactly how to command a crowd. Cameras flashed from every angle, reporters hurriedly typed notes, and supporters cheered like they were watching their favorite performer take the stage. The entire atmosphere was electric, part rally, part rock concert, part history in motion. But among the hundreds of reporters packed into the press section, one face stood out, calm yet burning with frustration. Her name was Rachel Myers, a respected political correspondent known for her fearless questions and blunt honesty. For weeks, Rachel had criticized President Trump's speeches on national television, calling them more showmanship than leadership. She wasn't there that night just to report. She was there to challenge him, face to face. As President Trump spoke, her expression never softened. She stood, arms folded, eyebrows drawn, her gaze fixed on him, and somehow he noticed. In the middle of his sentence, he stopped. His sharp eyes scanned the audience and locked right onto her. "Oh, look who it is," President Trump said into the microphone, his trademark smirk spreading across his face. "Fake news, Rachel!" "Always so angry, isn't she?" The crowd erupted in laughter, whistles, and applause. Supporters pointed and laughed, waving their signs proudly. But Rachel didn't flinch. She tightened her grip on her notepad and raised her voice above the noise. "Mr. President," she called out firmly, "why don't you answer a real question for once instead of mocking the press?" Instantly, the laughter faded. The entire arena fell silent. The tension was thick enough to feel. President Trump tilted his head slightly, as if amused by her boldness. Then, in a move no one saw coming, he leaned closer to the microphone and said, "You know what? Come up here, come on. Let's talk." The audience gasped in disbelief. A reporter, invited onto the stage with the President of the United States? That had never happened before. All eyes turned to Rachel Myers as history was about to unfold right before them. At first, Rachel thought the president was joking. The invitation sounded so unreal that for a second she just froze. But then President Trump waved his hand again, signaling to the Secret Service to let her pass through. The agents hesitated. This wasn't part of the plan, but they followed his order. Suddenly, every camera in the room zoomed in, lenses whirring, ready to capture a moment that was sure to go viral. "Ladies and gentlemen," President Trump said, turning back to the crowd with a grin, "we've got an angry reporter here tonight. Let's hear what she has to say, okay?" The audience erupted into cheers and laughter. Some chanted, "Bring her up," while others jeered, waving signs in the air. The energy in the arena shifted from excitement to pure anticipation. Thousands of people watching to see if Rachel would actually take the challenge. Rachel hesitated for a moment, heart pounding. Every instinct told her to stay put, but her journalistic spirit refused to back down. Taking a deep breath, she clutched her microphone, straightened her jacket, and began walking toward the stage. The crowd parted as she passed, some shouting encouragement, others mocking her. But her eyes never left the podium. As she climbed the steps, the atmosphere thickened. It was a clash of opposites. President Trump, towering with his usual confidence and showmanship, and Rachel Myers, calm yet fierce, determined not to be intimidated. The tension between them was almost cinematic. It felt scripted, but everyone knew it wasn't. This was real, raw, and unpredictable. When she finally reached the top, President Trump stepped aside, gesturing toward the podium. "Go ahead," he said into the mic, his voice echoing across the stadium. "The stage is yours." Rachel didn't hesitate. She raised her microphone and faced him directly. "Mr. President," she began firmly, "you've often criticized the media for being dishonest. But don't you think it's dangerous to call reporters the enemy of the people when all we're doing is reporting facts?" The crowd reacted instantly. Some booed loudly while others applauded her courage. Even President Trump paused for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, with a slow nod and a half smile, he replied, "Well, Rachel, Maybe if the media did report facts, people wouldn't call them the enemy. Ever think about that? Laughter rippled through the crowd, but what stunned everyone wasn't his reply. It was Rachel's reaction. She didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't back down. She stood tall, ready to fire back. And for the first time that night, the president seemed genuinely intrigued. For the next 5 minutes, what unfolded on that stage was nothing short of extraordinary, the kind of moment that felt larger than life. The tension, the spotlight, the roar of the audience, everything froze in time as President Trump and Rachel Myers stood face to face under the glaring lights. What began as a confrontation quickly transformed into a powerful, unscripted exchange that no one saw coming. Rachel, microphone steady in her hand, fired her questions one after another. She challenged his policies, questioned his tone toward journalists, and pressed him about his relationship with the media. Each question was sharp, deliberate, and fearless. You could hear the gasps from the crowd as she spoke, some booing, others clapping, but Rachel didn't care. She wasn't there to win over fans. She was there to make a point. President Trump, usually quick to cut off his critics with a sharp remark, didn't interrupt this time. Instead, he listened. Then, to everyone's surprise, he responded not with insults or one-liners, but with calm, measured explanations. His tone softened, his words deliberate. It was as if the energy between them had shifted, from confrontation to conversation. You see, Rachel, President Trump began, his voice echoing through the speakers. The media and I, we're in a constant fight. Always have been. But at the end of the day, I respect anyone who's willing to come up here and talk face to face. You've got guts. I'll give you that. The crowd broke into applause. Not the wild, mocking cheers from earlier, but genuine appreciation. The audience could feel the respect forming between two strong, opposing forces. Rachel seemed caught off guard for a moment. Her face softened, her tone quieter now. So, she asked carefully, you're saying you don't actually hate reporters? President Trump smiled slightly, leaning closer to the microphone. I don't hate reporters, he said. I hate lies. Big difference. Those 5 words, I hate lies. Big difference. Spread like wildfire. Within minutes, the clip exploded across social media. Hashtags like Trump Reporter Debate and Stage Showdown began trending on X, formerly Twitter. News networks cut into live coverage to replay the exchange. For the first time, people weren't just watching another rally, they were witnessing something historic. A rare, unfiltered moment where two sides stopped shouting and finally started listening. As the debate finally began to wind down, something completely unexpected happened, something that stunned even the people closest to the president. President Trump turned to Rachel Myers, the woman who had fearlessly stood her ground before thousands, and with a grin that caught everyone off guard, he said, "You know what? You've been tough, but fair. I respect that. Why don't you stay for the rest of the rally?" For a brief moment, the massive crowd fell silent, unsure how to react. Then, applause began to ripple through the audience, growing louder until it filled the entire arena. Supporters cheered, journalists exchanged shocked glances, and Rachel herself stood frozen for a second, trying to process what had just happened. Slowly she smiled, her first genuine smile of the night, and nodded. "Thank you." "Mr. President," she said softly, her voice barely reaching the microphone. What followed was something no one could have scripted. For the next 30 minutes, Rachel Myers, the reporter who had once called President Trump's rallies political theater, stood quietly at the side of the stage, watching him speak. She didn't interrupt or question. She simply observed. Every few minutes, President Trump would glance her way and crack a light-hearted joke, sometimes teasingly saying, "Careful, Rachel's watching." The crowd laughed, and even Rachel couldn't help but chuckle. It was a surreal sight. Two people who had been opponents only moments earlier, now sharing an unspoken sense of mutual respect. Cameras flashed nonstop. Social media feeds exploded with clips, captions, and disbelief. Did Trump just compliment a reporter? One post read. Others called it the most human moment of the campaign. When the rally finally ended, President Trump walked over to Rachel and extended his hand. She accepted it without hesitation. "I think the country could use more reporters like you," he said with a half smile. "Even if you drive me crazy sometimes." The crowd erupted in applause once again, cheering both of them. It was an unexpected, almost cinematic ending to what began as a fiery confrontation. Within hours, the moment went viral around the world. Some dismissed it as a publicity stunt, others praised it as a rare glimpse of civility in modern politics. But regardless of opinion, one truth was undeniable. That night blurred the line between confrontation and conversation, turning a clash into a moment of connection no one would ever forget. The next morning, every major news outlet across the country was replaying the same clip again and again. It was on every channel, every timeline, and every trending page. What had started as a heated confrontation between President Donald Trump and reporter Rachel Myers had transformed into one of the most talked-about moments in recent political history. Headlines dominated the airwaves and internet alike. Trump and reporter clash turns into viral moment of respect. When politics met courage, the unexpected stage showdown. Reporter challenges the president. What happens next shocks everyone, the news. Anchors analyzed every second of the exchange. Pundits debated whether it was a turning point in how the media and the president viewed one another. But to millions watching, it was something simpler. A rare human moment of mutual respect in a world that had grown used to anger and division. Rachel Myers became an overnight sensation. Her inbox flooded with messages from people across the political spectrum, supporters, critics, journalists, even students who said she inspired them to speak their minds. She had stood her ground on one of the biggest stages in the world, face to face with the most powerful man in the country, and she hadn't backed down. Even those who disagreed with her admired her courage. During an interview the next day, Rachel reflected on the encounter with calm humility. Sitting in front of the cameras, she smiled and said, "I didn't plan to go up there. Honestly, I thought he was joking." But in that moment, I realized, if we keep shouting from opposite sides, no one ever listens. That night, we finally listened to each other. Her words resonated far beyond the newsroom. Comment sections filled with messages about how civility still mattered, how disagreement didn't have to mean disrespect. For once, social media wasn't just arguing, it was discussing. Meanwhile, President Trump mentioned her again during his next rally. With a grin, he said, "Rachel, tough lady, smart, maybe not a fan of mine, but I respect her." The crowd cheered loudly, some laughing, others applauding. It was clear. The exchange had left an impression not just on viewers, but on the president himself. And that's the unbelievable part. A moment of unexpected respect between two people who seemed destined to clash. Sometimes the most shocking thing isn't a fight, it's understanding. In the end, that unforgettable night wasn't about politics, fame, or the media. It was about what happens when two strong voices face each other, not to shout, but to finally talk, and that is what made the whole world stop and say, "Unbelievable."